Welcome back to the Guna Fanzine Arsenal Women podcast. It's myself and Daisy. For the meantime, Izzy's having some technical problems. She may be with us a little bit later. She might not be. We've got some questions from you guys, the listeners, and we're going to touch on a couple of bits of injury news and the 2-0 win over Benfica. But Daisy, firstly, back in Lisbon, the memories flooding back.
Absolutely. Back on Pink Street, back with the same some of the same people. A lot of familiar faces and even familiar faces, I think, from those that were serving us in the bars as well. Many asking if we were here back in May and giving us special treatment as well. I think they really enjoyed our hospitality and they were playing North London Forever from the speakers outside. But all in all, a fantastic trip. I was just saying to you before, it definitely didn't feel like it sort of overrid what happened back in May. It felt like a new memories. Slightly different place to where we were, less people, of course, but still fantastic travelling support as always from the Arsenal, and a new stadium to tick off as well. Not the best hospitality at the stadium, but in terms of the memories that we made and the game, which eventually we got sort of into the game sort of second half. But yeah, fantastic trip and always great to go on these European away days.
Yeah, look, we got to touch on the stadium experience because I know there are a couple of issues around the final in terms of being the hot day, sort of the access to water. I mean, speaking as a journalist, there's been grounds where I've not had a great media experience on the continent as well. Although the final, I mean, UEFA take over the final and it was okay. But look, you put a tweet out about it, trying to sort of spread that not even awareness, just saying why is this a problem in the women's game? You know, you're all well behaved, etc. And everyone's sort of gone back and said, well, this is standard in the men's game, etc. But just because it is doesn't mean that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think if if we're comparing it to the final, for me, I had a really positive experience. I mean, the weather was difficult, and at times I stepped out. I got a drink. I spoke to even police that were there in the stadium in Lisbon, and I had a very positive experience on the day. Obviously, the result as well definitely played into that. But if we're comparing that to Benfica, I originally put the tweet out mainly because I think it deserves to be discussed, and I think the audience that we see in women's football and men's football is extremely different. I think that there is for very valid reason not a comparison needed because the demographic of the fans, the younger girls, the a lot of it them are that be fair to admit are older men as well, and it's not the same. It's not the same violence. It's not the same sort of atmosphere. It's not the same feel, and we were treated in a way that I don't think we deserved. We never acted in a certain way. The supporters club for Arsenal are fantastic. They go about things by planning logistically. They contact the club prior. They tell them how many there's going to be, the banners we're going to bring. We're going to do a fan walk from this destination. We were met immediately by riot police, which I understand in terms of security, but the feel that they gave us. I mean, we were doing a fan walk in and somebody threw a firework at us immediately. That's not the what we're used to. That's not what we expect, and it's not the behaviour we should tolerate. The police were so bothered about us, they didn't address the fans that were harassing us or violent towards us. Getting inside, we were sitting with Benfica fans. I mean, we were already in the gods. I think that was that people took the most from my tweet that I was complaining about being sat in the gods. But the real problem, I think, was the view. When you're sitting in a stadium like that, you don't need to be there. We could have a better view at the bottom. We don't need to be a net to cover us. We weren't even allowed to sit at the bottom of our section, which is I think is the players at the bottom couldn't even see up to us, and we're singing our hearts out at the top regardless. But sitting with Benfica fans who were doing their anthem, and they weren't removed despite not only us but also the Arsenal rep who was there. She was also amazing in trying to get the stewards, but they didn't want to have a conversation with us, and we have reported it back because we have a great organisation that's designed to try and help report back feedback and try and make positive arrangements. But in terms of the result, getting the 3 points, having a great time and enjoying it, that doesn't take away anything. But we should be able to call these things out and deservedly so, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think at this stage, the women's game and the men's game are different enough where UEFA, if this is a UEFA thing or if this is a Benfica thing, there needs to be the awareness of that we don't need the full-blooded approach that often isn't good for the men's game as well. I think Liverpool went to Galatasaray the other week and their fans were held in for 2 hours after. And, there are just countless bad experiences. There was a Champions League final in Paris a few years ago, of course, the Liverpool fans, and just this mismanagement there of the organisation, and we really don't want that creeping into the women's game. And I agree on the stadium view as well. When Lyon away, there was that stand empty behind the goal, and they put you up the top, and I get it from a sort of housery point of view in terms of looking at the competitive advantage, but it's not really necessary when there's enough. There's 7,000 people there. Izzy, thanks for joining in. Hopefully your signal can hold. You covered this one remotely for us. Wasn't a thriller, was it? Credit to Benfica, they're a good, well organised side, a good physical side, as Renée Slager's promised, and took Arsenal until the 57th minute to break through.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't particularly exciting. I think watching from home, I was just waiting for something to kick in and something to happen, and it just didn't feel like Arsenal entered that kind of upper gear. I don't know, it just didn't feel like the energy was completely there. Obviously, of course, the players were putting in their full effort and not taking that away from them. I just don't know if it was clicking, something wasn't quite working, and even the set pieces, there was a few headers from Lotte Wubben-Moy, for example, but she's coming in cold, hasn't played a lot of minutes, so you can't expect her to finish every chance because she's not going to be in her kind of peak clinical shape. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it was a bit flat, but it's 3 points. And as we say about, other teams when they win unconvincingly, a win is a win, and it's 3 points. It's away from home, and it's getting the Champions League campaign, off with a win finally. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was their best performance, but equally not their worst performance. And I think that the block's been a bit of a mixed bag, so it's at least a positive result to end it.
Yeah, Arsenal have won 1-0 and 2-0 in Lisbon this year, and so different those two games, and sort of the feeling, around those two games. I agree with the set pieces. Look at the men's side, the amount of talk around the men's side and set pieces at the moment, particularly last night, sort of breaking down Atletico, and sort of the whole argument is if there's an area of the game you can improve, why not? And it also helps if you're maybe not playing your best, if you're struggling to break a team down, Daisy. And it still feels like an area, probably personnel wise, Arsenal lack in anyway, because you look at the men's team, Gyökeres, Gabriel, Rice has these brilliant deliveries. I think Mariana's not been great in terms of her deliveries, but she's doing what she's being told in terms of some of those near post routines. I've liked Kyra Cooney crosses, sort of quite accurate, flatter crosses. But if Arsenal argue, look, we don't have a Nilestedt anymore, we don't have that big defender, big striker in there, but I still think they're not quite making use of the set pieces as other teams would.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think Arsenal have to be adaptive to the fact that they don't have, like you say, those tall players in there. They don't have those physically strong players. I don't think either. And Izzy touched on Lotte Wubben-Moy. I think that's probably the only area that you could capitalise on. For some reason, it's not working for Katie Reid in that the height there. That's probably a strength issue as well as she's developing. But I do think Lotte's probably your only chance at if they can really work that. Maybe even not straight away from a corner, but playing it short. Even though we hate that, but playing it short or cleverly or trying to find a sneaky route. Even I think we saw, Real Madrid when we had Catley heading it back across goal and Russo putting it in. I feel like we've lost an element of that as well. But if you're not going to capitalise from that, you've got to consider other options. I really liked seeing Chloe Kelly able to sort of do that sneaky set piece that got Arsenal second. I think that's clever, and that's the one area that I was going to highlight that I don't think we have talked about is I don't think I've seen Chloe Kelly as much doing those set piece deliveries as I don't know if that's because she hasn't been fully fit, and I think she hasn't played from the start as often. She's sort of come on and we've seen glimpses of what could be, but Cairo as well I think is the same. She hasn't played, a lot. We're only just starting to see her come on and start games. So it may be a personnel issue, as you say. It may be the case as these players start to be integrated into the team more. We see better set pieces, we see more clever set pieces, and we try and sort of search for an alternative option. Maybe that is playing it short. I liked the one where it fell to Olivia Smith, as I mentioned last week, in the box, and she's pretty good at having a shot from out of the box or from range. And also Katie McCabe hasn't been involved from shooting from outside the box in a long time, which I think somebody mentioned in one of my pieces recently and commented that, and I agree, because we used to score a lot of goals from McCabe at the edge of the box, which could be something we consider, but it seems like she's taking a lot of the set pieces. So I think there's lots for Renee to explore, but definitely a positive sign that we've seen a goal from a set piece. And maybe the other element is how we defend them, because we nearly had a goal conceded as well at the other end. Daphne obviously saving, but that's another area I think we have to consider.
68% possession for Arsenal, two shots on target were both the goals. I mean, they are still not creating enough, Izzy. It's as simple as that. And look, the formation has stayed exactly the same for the entire start of the season. In game, there's not really that in game management. Are we? I think we've seen a lot about Renee Slagers and how promising she is as a young coach, but tactically, are we seeing enough signs that things are changing? Because I really think they're just a little bit too predictable. The substitutions are predictable. The style of players is predictable. I know they won this game, but there was no sort of the odd chipped pass over the top to really, to really get these quick wingers like Smith in behind. It just feels a bit stale still for Arsenal.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think stale is a good word to use there because it is the same every week, and it's so easy to read for oppositions because obviously, this Arsenal side hasn't changed greatly in the last few seasons. So there's so much data of them playing that teams can look at and they can analyze. And it's so if they're not going to switch it up and they're not going to change their style of play, especially mid game, not necessarily coming into the start of the game, because obviously just start with what you do best. But if it's not working, you've got to change something. And yeah, we've not seen that from them. This not that from Renee Sega. It's like injuries apart from Mia Williamson, of course, which is maybe why those balls aren't coming over the top. Obviously, that's maybe her speciality, but it's one injury. We've said this before. We're not lacking the people to create these chances. So it's yeah, it's puzzling, and I wonder whether we're seeing Renee Sleg's kind of maybe lack of experience at this level coming through. I don't know if that's an unfair criticism, but if you look at Sonia Bonpastor with Cher example, she'll switch it up if it's not working, and she's coaching for so much longer. Perhaps she's just had more chances to explore. So yeah, it's really tough problem for us at the moment.
Leads me on to a question from Reese Evans, Daisy. Does Chelsea's relentlessness make it almost impossible to experiment and evolve the team? Is there too much pressure to not lose? Really good question, because we all want Arsenal to experiment, but Rene Slagers can argue, well, if there's a little bit more that I know and I think I can work with this base in terms of tactics and players, I'm not willing to risk it. But have we seen actually that's not worked and there's going to have to be more changing in the second block? I thought that was a really good question.
Yeah, fantastic question. I saw that one as well, and I think it's really interesting because if you are looking at it from Sonia's point of view, she is experimenting still, in my opinion, and I don't think people are realizing that so much. I think it's not just a change of personnel, but it's little things that she's adjusted since last season, and she's been able to do it so effortlessly that you don't notice it. Whereas I think if you look at Arsenal, the changes that are made are a lot of the things that Arsenal do are put under the sort of the microscope a little bit and really overanalyzed. And I think you sometimes can make these changes and not have to change the entire side. Taylor Hines has come in and offered a different element for Arsenal when they're still trying to integrate that midfield. She's still changing the front three every single week. It's not the consistent front three, and there's still question marks over what that best front three looks like. But these changes are happening, and obviously you don't want to lose. But I don't think making those changes always result in a lack of consistency. I think if we can start to see minor things changing every week until we find what clicks or what works, it's not necessarily so much of a challenge. But you can understand when Chelsea are so good, not even just Chelsea, but even Manchester United, who I think have been had a really good start to the season, other teams who are managing to do it so effortlessly and not drop points. It's kind of difficult when Arsenal feel like they can't do that. I don't know if they are maybe reluctant to do so, or there's a fear of maybe Renee Sagers changing what she thinks is working. We saw it so much. She's been so insistent on Mariona Little and Marnham for so long, and only recently has she started to adapt that. I think it's not something you can be afraid of as a manager, especially when it's not working. Had we been winning every game, you might be looking at it from a different perspective. But for me, if you're not winning every game, you're not playing well, you're not creating chances, you've got some vulnerabilities in defence, how can you expect to not make those changes and not take that risk? I don't think fans would be upset if Renee made a change when it wasn't working and it didn't work out as well. You have to look at it as that's how football kind of is.
Are there too many players who sort of Rene isn't getting the best out of in terms of not playing to their strength? I look at the my theory of can we play the odd ball in behind because there's the pace of the likes of Olivia Smith. Are Arsenal getting the best out of her? I think she's been one of the better performers, and we're starting to really see what she can do. She was really good, former Sporting player against Lisbon, against Benfica. Sorry, Caldente's probably playing in that deeper role. I know she didn't in midweek, and probably, she was really good there second half of last season, but it's not been her main position for most of her career. Alessia Russo, I don't think Arsenal are playing to her strengths. They continue to do that. Sort of Chloe Kelly's been in and out of the side. Caitlin Ford, we know these wingers are being rotated. Even, you look at Katie McCabe and how sort of centrally she's asked to play in midfield, but is that really working for Arsenal in their build-up? I'm not as sure. And the same with Emily Fox as well. So I just think a big rethink almost is needed, and it's another tough group of games. Nice to start it with Leicester away, but it does feel the longer this team and this sort of formation goes along, is it just a case of throwing everything behind that and hoping something sticks?
I actually think that the Benfica game probably showed us the most that I've seen from playing to strengths. I do think you're right. We could have played player strengths more, but I think having watched all the games that I've seen this season, I started to see a glimpse of how we were playing to player strengths in Benfica, and we were also tactically improving. And it might have been subtle, and it might have been okay. Now we can't create as many chances, but we mentioned a couple of weeks back, there's so many issues that Arsenal have that we're going to have to address them one by one, and people are going to have to be patient. That it's not going to be an overnight fix where one week you have all these issues and the next week there's no defensive problems, we create chances, we win the game, and it is a slow progress. But I think we played to Olivia Smith's advantages a little bit more in Benfica. We kind of seen her running at players, winning the ball back, taking players on. She loves to cut inside and shoot, which is why I'm unsure why Rennie hasn't tried her on the other side, because she loves a right-footed cut inside shot. I think
Mm.
playing Beth Mead hindered the progress that Arsenal could have made in that game, because I think we needed somebody like Caitlin Ford who can actually run at players and get in the space. And I often thought it was Taylor Hines that was sort of overlapping, whereas that might have suited somebody like Katie McCabe. So I think you're right. We're maybe at times getting it the right system, the wrong players. Also Kyra as well, Cooney Cross, obviously. I think we played to her strengths as well. She was dropping deep, and that was freeing up Mariona, who could then do what she does in the number 10. So I think we saw the best glimpse of players' strengths being played to at Benfica. It wasn't clicking first time, but there is an expectation that that won't happen because we've struggled to start this season the way we would have wanted. But if we see glimpses of that, that is possibly the bare minimum, but at the same time, I think it's actually not. I think it's a step in the right direction, and that's what we need right now, is to continue to do that. The one problem for me still is Alessia Russo. I don't think we're playing to her strengths, asking her to drop so deep still into the 10 when we could be using Mariona and having, when Olivia Smith gets sort of forward with the ball, there's nothing for her to do in a way, and we need Russo, Mariona to be coming forward at that time. So there's still little things, but I think probably the most progress that I've seen is in that Benfica game, despite it being quite slow of a tempo overall.
Yeah, I wonder with Russo though, and this is pure speculation, is it her as a striker wanting to drop deep and being unselfish? Because I think we know she's like that, and we know she can be a flat track bully when she gets these run of goals together, but is she trying to do too much and, help the team out, which a lot of the time is an honourable thing, but maybe Arsenal will be looking at that and just thinking, actually, we need her to stay up top. I also think there's a bit of a habit of playing two different types of wingers rather than two similar ones. So say if you go with Smith and Kelly or Ford and Mead, and actually for both, sort of, you have one winger with one quality, one winger who's a little bit on the other end of the spectrum, maybe it slightly distorts things. I don't know, but it also, when you're talking about swapping them over, maybe it just means they're a little bit too different when you're swapping them to different sides of the pitch. Whereas I actually really like the idea of a Smith and Kelly, and you sort of go all out pace, or maybe if you want a bit more time on the ball and driving at defenders, you then can go you Mead and Ford. But here again, Arsenal, it's nice problems to have, but again, it's not getting the best out of some of these players. But look, a 2-0 away win in Europe can't be sniffed at, and Arsenal back to winning ways in the Champions League and ending the block with two wins and two clean sheets, certainly defensively. And with Daphne van Domselaar as well, I've got a question about her that we'll come to, because she's had a good couple of games, made a really, really good save away to Benfica. May has tweeted us, said, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the goalkeeper's issue now that Manu is unfortunately injured. Daphne has some physical issues too, and Borba still seems to be adjusting or gaining confidence to Rene's style. Manu Zinsberger, I mean, goodness me, the ACL injuries in the women's game just keep coming, and I do think there's an element of it not being the big names, sort of this latest wave, and I think the discussions need to be louder and louder because I think the sort of the Arsenal crisis, Sam Kerr, I mean all of these big names, not even worth going through them, but I think there was a real period of the top players, if you like, and now there's the likes of Roman Haag, Oroz at Spurs, Liverpool have had a couple, Herbinger as well, Zinsberger for Arsenal. These might not be the top of the world players, but we still need to be pushing on and trying to get this research and investment and whatever it needs to be with these ACL injuries, Daisy, because it just seems never ending. And you really feel for Manu Zinsberger, but Arsenal, I'm sure, will be desperate to sort of keep her in and around the squad. And I think Austria have got 4 or 5 players now sidelined with these injuries.
Yeah, Austria, I think a lot of the tweets that came out were their key players and comparing it to what it would be like if that was for England and the key players that would be missing. But it's 150, I think, recent figures that came out for the year 2025 in the women's game. I mean, it's absolutely atrocious, and for it to happen, Manu obviously in training, and compare that to Sam Kerr that happened in hot weather training. I think that was obviously a couple of years back now, but she's still recovering even to this day and still not fully back and in that Chelsea squad. So it's not just about those big names, as you say. Liverpool out with 2 of their key midfielders as well. So lots of problems, and obviously we wish the best to Manu and everyone else is recovering from that injury, because Leah said, and I saw a post about it today, what it really feels like and how bad of an injury it really is, the pain that you go through and the experience and the mental side of that. So yeah, we can never stop having discussions on that and just how bad it's getting. For a period of time I felt like we were making progress in discussing and research, and then all of a sudden it seems to have become a pandemic again, and all of a sudden every single player, every single team's experiencing it in some capacity. Lena Oberdorf, I think, as well, one who's just come back and in her first game back has sort of tore her knee in a different position on her return. So it really is a huge problem. And back to the question that May asked about the goalkeepers, I think you touched on it potentially, that Arsenal had been including Manu Zinsberger as the number 2 to keep the squad morale and to see her that as her role, and having Borbe potentially playing as the goalkeeper at a second choice if we were to not play Daphne, whether that's a cup game or a lower level opposition. I still think you're probably right in that sense, and we've only seen Borbe once, and that's not really fair to judge off one game. So I think that's a case of learning to adapt, and I do very much expect that Rene will back her now. Really exciting for Lydiard to be included in the
Mm.
Champions League squad. I think we've got to touch on that. She's very, very tall, isn't she? I see all the pictures and I'm like, wow, is she taller than Katie Reid? But
Yeah,
yeah, I think
I think my understanding is she's going to be in and around the squad a little
mm,
bit more because of this Zinsberger
of
injury,
course.
which is good for you look at Naomi Williams, she needs to stay with Bristol City. I think that really needs to be a last resort, recalling her, because she just needs regular football as much as possible, Naomi Williams. And then the next academy goal would be Hope McSheffrey, who's on dual registration with #United, but Amy Lydiard very much an Arsenal under 21 player, so that's the one they'll be promoting up, if you like, and training with the team. But yeah, a remarkable one for her. And she's been called up to the England under 19 squad as well, which she wasn't expected. She went there as emergency cover as well in Estonia under 19s. They won today in Estonia, I think 6-0. So she's had a couple of weeks thinking, wow, had a taste of the big time going out to Lisbon, being the only goalkeeper on the bench. But the way Arsenal do it is they really try and get the goalkeeping union, and they put. I remember speaking to Madison Millington Stanbury this summer, who would have been called up to sort of match day squads and helping out, say, Manu Zinsberg with the warm up, and they put real focus on that. Actually, even though it just looks like from us in the stands that they're just doing a warm up and they're having some shots and saving it, those goalkeepers as a union, sort of the different jobs they do, the supporting each other there, all really really important, sort of in and around the dressing room, and they try and make sure when these young players come through, sort of they know exactly what their role is. They're in that sort of comfortable environment when they're supporting the senior goalkeepers. So yeah, it's not a crisis for Arsenal. I think with the Zinsberger news and then finding out that Van Domselaar's not being called up for the Netherlands because of a knee issue, it is just the same one, I'm told, that's been plaguing her for months now. I think there was an ankle problem just before the Lyon second leg, but this is a knee one that sort of she's been battling with over the summer. I think Arsenal would be probably delighted to sort of keep hold of her under the watchful eye of the medical team. So Borba was only ill. There's nothing more to that. My understanding is not a physical injury. So overall, it's gutting for Manu Zinsberger, but Arsenal, they won't be getting Sarah Buhadi back. We're not quite there yet. Izzy sent me that. So yeah, interesting though around the goalkeepers, but good that Van Dom Salar's back to it, and maybe we'll see a little more of Annika Borba. We're running out of time, so we're going to fly through these questions. We've got one about a contract extension. I might save for another time because there's just no info out there, to be honest, around contract extensions. And Susie at Speedbug007, do you see a number of players requesting loan moves in the January window? Well, a lot of Arsenal's younger players are out on loan already. The big talking point here will be Jenna Niswanger, who I still very much think is just going to say, that'll do me. I'm off. I don't know where, I've no information, but I can't see her staying.
Yeah, we saw a little while back her and Kyra Cooney-Cross leaving the pitch after Arsenal. I think it was after the Villa game, or it was around that time. It was a tough period for Arsenal, and they sort of didn't even stay for the huddle. And it was when neither of them were playing. Obviously, we're seeing Kyra getting in there now. I don't think that's as much of a concern as it is for Jenna. Renee talked about the next block of games, and she talked about taking it block by block. So it is interesting that this is probably the period coming up now where we will sort of get the answers in a way about Jenna, whether she plays in those games that come up in cup competitions, or we've got a bit of room for rotation. But it doesn't feel like she's only been included in squads recently, unfortunately, because of player injuries and illnesses, and that's not the biggest positive sign for her. And it's a real shame because I don't think it's after the pre-season she had. I mean, we sat here and praised sort of how much of an impact she made, what impact she might have made, and what kind of impact she might have made coming off the bench in certain games. So it really is a shame. Other players I think Arsenal probably need, especially looking at injuries that we've had. We don't know how we're gonna see with Leah Williamson. Obviously, Katie Reid taking a little bit of a knock, Steph Catley not being 100%, Emily Fox with a bang to the ankle. So many injuries, as we've briefly touched on. Can we afford to lose the likes of Laia Kadina? I hope not. And sort of most of the other players in the squad are being involved. They're playing, so the only real one I guess is Jenna Niswanger. But I am interested to see if this is the block that Rennie starts to integrate her more. Otherwise, she'll be faced with some tough questions, I'm sure, because she already was by journalists in recent press conferences, to which she brushed it off in a very specific way, almost as if to not actually address the issue and sort of explain that it may be in the future blocks. But we're getting to that now, so it is crunch time, isn't it, for Niswanger?
Yeah, I think Emily Fox went off injured, and we've all thought, why on earth have Arsenal got four left back options and one senior
Yeah.
right back? And I think again these recruitment questions, do need to be asked because that's a little bit puzzling. Taylor Hines in the Lionesses squad. Katie Reid unfortunately had to drop out. Minor groin issue, is my understanding. She'll be back. I'm sure that's the general consensus. There's plenty more to come from Katie Reid, but I'm sure she'll be gutted. And just finally, Becca Derby on Blue Sky. What is the biggest thing Arsenal need to tweak to get back to scoring goals in abundance? Personnel, mindset, tactics, or something else? And predictions for the results in the November block. It's a big one. I'll leave that with you, Daisy, for the final word. Leicester away, Chelsea at home, Bayern Munich away, Tottenham away, Real Madrid home, before another international break.
Oh, this is two very big questions with a timer ticking. I would say we've discussed so much of what needs to change, and I think as I said, Benfica was an example of maybe how we can play to Arsenal's system and advantage and player strengths. I think I'm with you on the wingers. That's where for me in Benfica we didn't score as many, was because we played the wrong style of winger in Bethme. That's not a reflection of her as a player, just that she was dropping centrally and it fell to Taylor Hines, who doesn't have the isn't the kind of player to go and then take on players. Potentially, we could have benefited, like you said, from a Chloe Kelly, Olivia Smith, even a Ford. I think Smith, if we see a bit more of Ford getting forward, and obviously playing to having more players in and around the box in in the final third. That's a very brief answer to that question, but I'm sure we'll talk about it more. Results: Leicester, I hope, will be a win. They're not exactly flying, but I did say in my piece, any result at the moment for Arsenal is tough because any game, sorry, is tough, and any result is needed. Chelsea, I really do think that we need to be careful defensively. If we have all players back to full fitness and we have Van Domselaar, Fox, Catley, then we can challenge Chelsea, especially since they've have defensive vulnerabilities that not many people are talking about. The derby's massive. I'm probably scared for that one the most because Tottenham have looked really good at times, but I it's a tough one to predict and probably the hardest of the block. Bayern conceding a lot against that Barcelona side, and for me that maybe is their weakness. And exposing them, if we can have a good sort of run of games and we get sort of scoring goals again, that could be our strength. And Real Madrid, I think we want probably is that at home?
Yes. Meadow Park.
Okay, okay. I hope that we can win that one as well. But that was very confident from me saying sitting here and saying we're only just getting a run of form. But as I said in my piece, and I talked a lot about, I hope this is the start of a new sort of block for Arsenal and that they can continue to on this good run of form and build on what they learnt from Benfica every single time.
Yeah, Chelsea and Bayern, what did for
Oh,
Jonas Eidevall last season? Arsenal have those
yeah.
games in the space of a few days again. Daisy, we've crammed a load into half an hour there. Izzy was lost along the way due to internet, but we'll be back for more next week. Good to see you as ever.
Yeah, thank you.